So, okay, so the title of the class is Beyond the Basics of Lashon Hara, Rambam's Hilchot Te'ot. So, I love games, but okay, first, I think like we all hear about Lashon Hara a lot, and we know that it's horrible and everything, but I don't want this class to just be like fluffy or like things that we already know. I want to be in the sources, and also tonight I'm gonna give you an inside scoop about how I make my classes because it might be the second to last week, even though I'm just gonna continue even if the SEA doesn't. But it's a science that you learn when you practice it. Okay, let's start with the game. So the game is you will be the judge. You're gonna judge if it's lashon hara, motzi shem ra, rechilu, or nothing. Okay. So if you don't know these terms, don't worry because by the end of the class, you're gonna answer these questions with confidence. Okay. So the first question: going to my neighbor and telling them that the mailman is wearing a red shirt today. And he actually is wearing a red shirt. Okay, that's just a thought. If you guys want to answer now, okay, yeah, answer in the chat like Marcel Cohen. Marcel Cohen said Dechilu. Oh, Vivian, okay. You should write, it should be Marcel and Vivian. No, I'm kidding, you don't have to do that. Okay, cool. Anyone else could also, we'll discuss it or whatever it's up to you guys could create the class, Okay. Next thing, telling him that the mailman put a red shirt on behind a bush. How are we defining each one? Yeah, so I didn't define it yet because we're gonna look at that in the beginning of the class. But should I tell you before? Interesting. No, I'm not gonna tell you before. You could just you could write it on the side, like, or just think about it or call out or anything, and then we'll discuss it after when we know the answers. Okay, so telling him that the mailman put a red shirt on behind the bush. Second one is going to my neighbor and telling them that the mailman was wearing a red shirt when he was really wearing a green shirt. These are random questions, but yeah. Okay. The third one is going to my neighbor and telling them that the mailman was wearing a red shirt today and that it was not flattering. And then the fourth one is going to your neighbor and handing him the mail because it got delivered. Ooh. Okay. Because it got delivered to the wrong house and telling them that the mailman always messes up. And finally, fifth is, oh, the mailman by accidentally put it in my mailbox. So I just go put it in my neighbor's mailbox and don't tell anyone. Okay. Just a random thing to start off the night. Now we're going to go into the sources. המרגל בחברו עובד בלא תעשה שנאמר לא תלך רכיל לא תלך רכיל בעמך ואף על פי שאין לוקין על דבר זה עוון גדול הוא וגורם להרוג נפשות רבות מישראל. לכך נשמח לו ולא תעמוד על דם רעך. שא ומד מה אירע לדואג האדומה. Okay. So I read this source. This is how I created the class. I read this source and I'm like, let me annotate this. Interesting. So if you read this, what would you do to annotate it? Or anything that like sticks out to you or you want to question or where would you go with this? Is that clear? But like also you guys don't need to answer. So you could also chat. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'll show you my annotations. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay. Okay, my annotations. So a little thing. I needed to put a big picture so you wouldn't see my annotations because it would be close. Whatever. Anyway, so when I was reading this, first I noticed the weird language of hamiragel bechavero. Like it's talking about rechilu, which we're going to define in a second. But miragel, which is I usually think of meraglim, spying. So interesting word choice. That's what I thought of. Then I underlined lo telech rachil be'amecha. I underlined I'll also thank you for whoever joined, Rochelle Towell and Yola and Kelly. And we just started. Don't worry. We're talking about Lashon Hara, but within sources, and we're defining rechilu and Lashon Hara and motzi shem ra. And we just played a little game that we're going to answer later in the class. So you missed nothing. So now, we're talking about this, so I underlined also the Pesukim that they quote. And then also what stood out to me is it said that someone who is a de'echil be'amecha is, it really comes from the word peddler, where they go from one person to the other and they talk about other people. This gorem lehadog nefashot rabot Israel. This is the cause of slaughtering of many souls in Israel. So, like this sin. So that's just intense. So I marked that. And then it says, okay, and that's why it's close to Lo Tamod Adam Le'echa. And then it says, go and learn the story of Doeg HaDomi. So I highlighted these things. Now what would I do next? Next, I would think on my own, why do I think that the word that is usually used for spies is here with regards to Rechilut, in which you transfer information from one person to another? Okay. Any thoughts on this? Why would they use the word which is used for spies? You could, yeah, go.
The word for spies is kind of like maybe makes me think of, I don't know if this is where you're going with that at all. It kind of makes me think of like they spied and told Lashon Hara about the land as opposed to I think there's a different word instead of there was just supposed to tour.
Yeah.
As opposed to Meragel, like spy.
Right. Thank you for answering. Excellent. Okay, so I guess I was thinking that spies tell over stories, and that it's also, I think the problem with Rechilu is that everyone has their own twist and their own vision of a scenario. So they could just say something, but with their own little tone or twist. So spies tell over stories. Spies could be secretive. So maybe Rechilu has to do with something with secretive. Also, there's usually an enemy in the scenario with when you spy someone out. Like, why would you do that? So maybe it's this intention of a bad intention that you're against someone. So that was just my thoughts about the word meragel. Then, after I would do that, I would look up the pesukim that it quotes here. And I would try to dig deeper and see if it gives me insight. So let's do that together. Oh, also, I would go on and read the next source. We're only read the first Mishnah. And we want to read the second to see if it's continuing the same idea so I could get more of a context. So first we're going to do that. So Mishneh Torah, Ezehu Rachil. Who is the Rachil? Zeh sheto'en devarim, veholech mizeh lezeh, veomer kach amad peloni, kach vekach shamati apeloni. So someone who said, goes to another and says, so-and-so said such and such about you, he did such and such to you, a lot of suches over here. I heard that he did this and this to you, or wants to do it, and afal pishahu emet, even if he's saying something true, that this destroys the world, machari v'ta'olam, which is very crazy. So that means sort of like, let's say I have a friend that said something negative about someone else, or not even something negative, it could be anything, and I go tell this other person. We'll use the mailman example. So let's say I see the mailman secretly changing his shirt behind the bush. That's like a little odd. So I'm gonna go tell my friend about it. Even though it's true, this destroys world. So we're gonna see further. But then let's continue reading. V'yesh avon gadol mizeh ad me'od. But there's something worse than rechilut, which we know is lashon hara. So taking it a step further from rechilut, in which you're sort of just like transferring information, that could be neutral, and lashon hara is you have a negative intention. You want to harm this person. You want to say something bad about them, and even if it's true, oh yeah, wow, that red shirt is so ugly. He wore it so ugly, like I don't know why he would wear that. Something like that. Like you're insulting the person. And then aval haomed sheked nikda. Oh, but someone who lies, nikda motzi shem ra al chavera. But someone who lies, maybe in a place where red is not supposed to be a good color, and they say, oh, he was really wearing red, but he was wearing green. that would be motzi shem ra because he's lying. Aval baal lashon hara, זה שיושב ואומר כך וכך עשה פלוני וכך וכך היו אבותיו וכך וכך שמעתי עליו. You're going on and on. You're accustomed to saying Lashon Hara. That's a Baal Lashon Hara. ועמד דברים של גנאי. And you're saying very negative things. And then על זה אמר הכתוב, יחרט השם כל שפתי חלקות לשון מדברת גדולות. May the Lord cut off all flattering lips, the tongue that speaketh proud things. Okay, interesting. So now we just distinguished between Lashon Hara, Rechilu, Motzi Shem Ra, and nothing. So let's see if we could answer it now. So going to my neighbor and telling them that the mailman was wearing a red shirt today, and he really was. So first I was thinking, oh, maybe this is Rechilu. But then I asked Rabbi Albert Satin today, like about 10 minutes ago, which was a little irresponsible of me, but I thought we would make the class together. And he said that Rechilu is not just saying anything about another person, because I don't think we should talk about other people in general, but it's saying something that like other people could have saw that the man was wearing a red shirt, but other people did not see him change his shirt behind the bush. So it's something where it's public knowledge that he wore a red shirt, but it's not public knowledge that he changed behind the bush. So the second one would be Rechilu, and the first one is like more like nothing. But you got to be careful because this also could be Avak Lashon Hara, in which this could cause Lashon Hara because maybe you're saying something bad about him, but you're just implying it. Next, going to my neighbor and telling them that the mailman was wearing a red shirt when he was really wearing a green shirt. So that's lying. So that would be a Motzi Shem Ra. And the third one, going to my neighbor and telling him that the mailman was wearing a red shirt today and that it was not flattering, that would be definitely Lashon Hara because he's saying something negative. Davad Gnai, Shel Gnai. Fourth one, going to your neighbor and handing them their mail because it got delivered to the wrong house and telling them that the mailman messed up. That would be Lashon Hara. Or I wrote Rechilu to Lashon Hara, but you're saying something that's going to cause Lashon Hara about this guy. That, oh yeah, he always messes up, what a stupid guy, I don't know what he's doing. And then lastly, putting misplaced mail in your neighbor's mailbox is not just nothing, it's a chesed, and you should do it when no one's looking so that no one's embarrassed. Okay, now that we cleared that up, anyone have any questions? Let me see this.
Sam.
Yeah.
Are there halachic, like, so you read all those things, but like, are there halachic parameters that like imply there's like a consequence to speaking or doing such and such? Or how many just saying, oh, terrible thing to do, don't do this? Just curious, like what the context is of the statement.
Of which statement? Sorry.
Of like all the sources that like you showed us up until now. Is it written as like a halacha that if you do this, there's X and X consequence? Or, because like it's halachot de'ah, but is that trying to tell you that like there's a consequence if you don't do it? Or is it like meant as an encouragement? Like what is the purpose of the sources coming to tell us?
I see what you're saying. Okay, so so this is the Mishnah. I think the purpose of Hilchot De'ah and the Mishnah Torah in general is to tell you straight halacha. But to speak about that, I was reading, what's it called? The Chafetz Chaim and all halacha of Lashon Hara, and it was basically saying the same thing. And also all these things come from Gemara. But I don't think if you say Lashon Hara, the world is going to be destroyed tomorrow. You know, like, so that's probably like an exaggeration to show you that it's just a very negative thing. But I do think it's asud from the Torah to speak Lashon Hara. Does that answer your question? And Rechilu.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Feel free to chat about it. I feel like Victoria is very smart. She'll answer. No, I'm kidding. But we could also discuss it if that's not okay. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next thing. We're going to look up the Pesukim that I found that was in the Mishneh Torah, because that's how you make a class. Next. So, so, Ani Hashem. So why do you think that these two things are juxtaposed? That you shouldn't go be a talebearer and lo tamod adam re'eka. Don't stand by when your fellow is being like destroyed, killed, or whatever. Yeah, Marcel, was that a question? I mean, was that an answer? No. Okay, so I guess he says it before, but it's because I think this is like bringing it at a new level. Like when you speak badly about someone else, you are killing them. That's one. But two, you can't. If someone's saying something to you, we're gonna see that the listener is actually more culpable for the sin than the speaker. Um, but if someone's saying something to you and you're not stopping, you're like sort of watching murder and not stopping it. Right. Lashon Hara causes destruction. Amazing. Okay. And we're recognizing that God is there and you don't, and Ani Hashem, so don't do this. Okay. Next, what you would do in a class is you would look at commentaries on this pesukim, on this pasuk. So you see Rashi, and I will say briefly. Oh, Zoom is not letting you unmute. Okay. You have to connect to audio. Oh, you probably did. Whatever. Okay, so you could type in the chat or whatever. Okay, anyway, so we're reading Rashi. He says, Ani omer al Shem shekol mishalche medanim u'mesapre lashon hara hochim bebate ra'ahem leragel ma. I'm going to read this in English, actually. Friends' houses, they go to the friends' houses in order to spy out what evil they can see there. Welcome, Elian. Thanks for coming. I'll just give a brief overview. So far we talked a little bit about what Rechilut is, what Lashon Hara is, what Motzi Shem Ra is, and all different things that are connected to bad speech. And briefly, Rechilut is talking about another person, but that it could lead to bad talk about them. And Lashon Hara is with the intention of harming them. Motzi Shem Ra is lying. The other two are the truth. Okay, anyway, so we're looking at Lo Telech Rachil Ba'amecha, and we Rashi on it. And Rashi is defining Lo Telech Rachil as going to spy on your neighbor and looking for evil, and then to pass it along. And he says they're called Holche Rachil, which is the same as Holche Regilah. He's actually bringing the word Achil and switching the word Chaf with a Gimel. And he says that after, and it's just very interesting. And then he says every time it says Ragel in the Torah, it says also the word like Holech, and that is and that ties Regilu, like the spy, and Rachil. Very interesting. So, but what do we learn from this? One thing that I learned from that is that always ask questions on every detail. Like in the beginning when we were asking Meragel, like why using that word? And to know that Rambam actually 100% knew this Rashi and knew that he equated the word Dagil and Rachil. And that we have something to learn from that. And I think that's cool. Okay, next, quick review. I guess we just reviewed, but we'll do it quickly. We are not permitted to relate Rechilu even when our intention is just to make a point, and even when the perpetrator would readily admit that the report is true. So even if it's true, and like the person would admit it, don't speak about other people. And we're going to see why later. The next thing, the word Rechilu comes from Rachil, a peddler. The gossip is like a salesman going door to door, hawking their merchandise. Unfortunately, in this case, the merchandise isn't bruises or encyclopedias, it's slander, anger, and hatred. Third, Lashon Hara, literally evil talk, like Lashon, your mouth, and Hara, evil. And any derogatory statement, harmful, and it usually includes tale-bearing, Rechilu, and slander, Motzi Shem Ra, which is spreading lies. Then this part I want to focus on a little. The prohibition of Lashon Hara applies whether one actually speaks of the person with one's mouth or writes it in a letter, i.e. texting, for example. Also, it makes no difference if one says the Lashon Hara explicitly or if one relates through a hint or a facial expression, my mom was saying. All these cases are Lashon Hara. Know also that even if one denigrates oneself, Samantha, yeah, you wore such an ugly shirt today, but so did this person. It's still Lashon Hara, even though you're putting yourself down also, and you're like equating yourself to the other person. But I think just significant is like anything, your face or your hinting or anything could be Lashon Hara. Definitely text, which is very easy to do, and talking about other people, dangerous stuff. Now, I want to focus on a few things. We're going to continue reading the Mishneh Torah. Unless anyone has any questions and want to stop me, they can, or anything like that. But why is Lashon Hara so bad? And yeah, first, how bad is it? Very bad. And why is it so bad? Okay. I've been reading a lot, which I don't know if you guys like, or do you guys want to read? You could thought in the chat. You like when I read, right? Give me a nod, maybe. Adina likes reading. Adina, you go read, if you want.
Okay, I could read.
Oh no, so
Should I
I'll
read the
read. You want to?
No, whatever you want. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll read. No pressure. I like reading, but I just don't know. Like, I don't want to be talking the whole time, you know? I lack the participation. But you chat, so it's good. Okay. Okay, אמרו חכמים, שלוש עבירות נפרעים מן האדם בעולם הזה, ואין לו חלק לעולם הבא. 3 cardinal sins that you don't have olam haba from. 1, avodat kochavim. Actually, you guys know it. I should hide this, but you know it. Avodah zarah, gilu ariyot, v'shvichut damim. Remove you from the world. Crazy statement about to come up. Lashon Hara keneged kulam. But Lashon Hara is equated to all of them. Okay, that is crazy. Something we could do so easily is equated to bowing down to an idol, sleeping with someone you're not supposed to, and killing someone. Woohoo, let's see how. Oh, even further, someone who says Lashon Hara is basically a atheist. It's going to say that. Or someone who goes against God and his essence. We're going to look at this pasuk in a second. And three people are involved in Lashon Hara. Ha'omra, the person who says it. Ve'hamekabla, the person ve'hamekabela. The person who receives who they're talking to, the listener, and the person that we're talking about. So 3 people involved. And what do they say? yoter min ha'omra. The person who receives is listening is worse than the person who's saying Lashon Hara. That was just crazy to me. Like, I could be by my friend's house and they're telling me Lashon Hara, and I'm worse than them who's saying it. Okay, but we're going to analyze this together. But first, question to you. How can Lashon Hara be equated to these very evil things? Why is someone who speaks Lashon Hara akin to an atheist? First, answer the first question. Why? Yeah, go, Adina.
Because it's like you're putting down Hashem's creation, like denying, like they have like that they're great also, like have a Tzelem Elokim by saying that.
Yes,
by putting them down.
That. Love that. That was definitely one of my points. Check. Family Feud, you got the 100-point or whatever it is. Anyone else? Why is Lashon Hara so bad? Cricket. Let's go into the sources. Oh, Jacqueline, go.
What was your question, Sam? I missed the question.
Okay, so Lashon Hara is equated to Avodah Zarah, Gilu Ariyot, and Shvut Amim. And I'm asking why you think it's so bad. Like, why could it be equated to that?
Don't the Chachamim talk about, like, embarrassing another person as, like, equated with murdering a person? So, like, it could be that, like, in that sense, it ties back to it?
Yes, agree. Thank you. Love that. Marcel saying, can legit ruin a person's life. Also causes you yourself to think, in a more judgmental way. That's true. Wow. Oh, you're like, oh, is she gonna get my reference because I wrote judge, not judgmental? Okay, nah, I'm kidding. Judgy, got you. Okay, judgy way. Yeah, honestly, that's really true. Even when people do things they're just around you, they affect what you do, even like slyly, which is just crazy how you just surround yourself with really good people. But yeah, definitely ruin people's lives. It's a big deal. Okay, but now let's go into the sources. So how did I find this source? Because it quotes it right here at Achin 16b. So now I went to there. Okay, this can be derived. Oh, first, anyone want to answer the question? why someone who speaks Lashon Hara is akin to an atheist. Why is it like that they don't believe in God and such a rebellion to God? Adina said one answer, which I really liked. Okay, we're going to read on. But first we're going to answer the first question. How could Lashon Hara be equated to these other three things? So it's very cool when you actually look at the Gemara and the stuff behind the basic halacha. Okay, this can be derived from a verbal analogy based on the word great. It is written here, may the Lord cut off all of flattering lips, the tongue that speaks great things. So here, it's going to be playing on the words that they use in the Pesukim that refer to slanderous discussion, slanderous speech, where it says that it's great things. And then it's going to say, and it is written with regard to idol worship, and Moshe returned to the Lord and said, oh, this people have sinned a great sin, and have made for themselves a god of gold. So with Avodah Zarah, it also used the word great, but it calls it a great sin. Then, with regards to Gilui Arayah, it also says, how can I do this great wickedness? It talks about in the story of Yosef and Bat Potifar, whatever. Okay, then also with Shvichut Amim, it says with Cain that my punishment is greater than I can bear. So what the Gemara here is picking up on is that all these three things say that this is a great sin, this is a great sin, this is a great sin. But what do we notice the difference between this and this? These are in singular and this is in plural. That's what it says. So it says the Torah describes each of these three cardinal sins with the word great in the singular, whereas malicious speech is described with the plural term great things, indicating that it is equivalent to all three of the other transgressions together. I thought that was just cool, like seeing where this comes from. Also causes you yourself to think in a more judgy way. What is great in Hebrew? Oh, gadol. But here, actually, let's see. Where is that pasuk again? Okay, but it's gadol. Anyway, for Psalms 12:4. Or nagbir sifatenu. I will get you the pasuks in Hebrew. Pasukim. But I think it's gadol. Anyway, let's go back. Now I want to talk about why someone's an atheist if they speak Lashon Hara. So this is the Gemara that we just had, and it quotes this Tehillim, Yud Bet Hey. And we are going to now go to this pasuk. So you always got to just unpack the layers. That's how you make a class. So, Asher amru liloshonenu nagbir tzifatenu itanu mi'adon lanu. They say, by our tongues we shall prevail, with lips such as ours. Who can be our master? So interesting. So I think what they're saying here is that they're saying, like, when you speak Lashon Hara, you are the master. They forget that there's God and that He's the master. But one second. Yeah. So I think that when you speak negatively about someone else, you forget that you're not so amazing. Not that you're not so amazing, but like, let me think of how to say this. 1 second. Okay, got it. When you speak Lashon Hara, you think that you are so high and mighty, and that I could talk bad about these people because I am great or I mastered these qualities. And like, you forget also, like Adina said, you wouldn't make fun of God's creations if you were aware of God and that He's the master and that He created everything. And you also wouldn't talk bad about someone if you realized that they're supposed to have this, that, and you're supposed to have this. You wouldn't be jealous. But we're going to go further into this because I know I just scraped the surface. So I want to connect. I think here it's talking about being arrogant and having pride get in the way, causing you to speak Lashon Hara. So we're going to see the connection between these. Right, because what I was getting from here, I don't know if I brought the source, but is that when you are arrogant, you forget who your real master is. And then when you forget who your real master is, you think you're the master and you'll speak Lashon Hara. Okay, so now let's go to a different Tehillim. Also, when I was reading the sources, it's amazing because Tehillim, there were a million different pesukim that were talking about bad language, and I think it's beautiful that Tehillim could be such a positive language, and it shows you what you should be doing with your speech and singing to God and praising Him. But anyway, okay. מלשונאי בסתר דאהו אותו עצמית גבה עיניים ורחב לבב אותו לא אוכל. He who slanders his friend in secret, I will destroy. I cannot endure the haughty and proud man. So again, we see the juxtaposition of pride and Lashon Hara. So let's go into this. Whoever slanders his neighbor in secret, I will destroy him. Whoever is haughty of eye and proud of heart, I will not suffer him. So this is quoting the Tehillim that we just saw. So it says, do not read the phrase as I will not suffer him, but as with him I cannot bear to dwell. So it's saying, God is saying that He cannot bear having this person in the world with Him. And there are those who teach this notion of God not being able to tolerate a certain type of person in reference to the arrogant. So what the Gemara is saying here is that someone who is arrogant, God cannot tolerate. They can't be in the world. Someone who is proud of heart. And let's see more. And why do we think that someone who's arrogant, God doesn't like? What does it mean to be arrogant?
Sam, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's so interesting because it really does make sense. I feel like Avodah Zarah, you're serving something that like self-serving, right? It almost makes me think of like, I'm trying to think of where I heard this in reference to, but if you're too haughty, you don't have space in your life for God, right? It's all about you.
Edging God out, right? Besser's thing.
That could be it for sure. And I feel like I also thought about this when it came to chametz and matzah, like haughtiness. But I love the connection.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to see another source that these two, pride and Lashon Hara, is connected. Sforno on Leviticus. We have evidence in our scriptures that King Uzziah's arrogance was punished with Sarat for his haughtiness, as this sin was considered a trespass against God Himself. So it's saying here that someone got Sarat because of their haughtiness. And what do we know famous about Sarat and Lashon Hara? Come on, someone answer.
You have to, after you get Lashon Hara, you're put in like Cherem, like you have to leave the camp.
Yeah, exactly. That Miriam, the prime example, which we're going to see in the next source, spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe, and then she got Sarat. It's like connected. Also makes me think of Kochi ve'otim yadi. Yes, love that, Jacqueline. Okay.
Wow, shout out to Esther Hidari today.
Yeah, I'm like, I heard that recently. Where did
I actually missed her class, and the only thing I heard from it when I passed my grandma's phone were those words. So I missed her class, and I told her to send it to me, and I didn't even listen to it yet. But as you're speaking, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I heard these words today. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike. There you go.
Okay, so so it says in Devarim, Hishameh b'nei Sarat lishmon me'od la'asot kechol asher yoru etchem hakanim haleviim kasher tzivitim tishmuru la'asot and zachor et asher asa Adonai Elohecha leMiriam b'derech b'tzetchem leMitzrayim. So Sarat again is caused from Lashon Hara, and it says in the source haughtiness. So again, another connection. But now I want to see why. So now we're going to talk about the antidote to speaking Lashon Hara, and it's going to give us insights more into this connection between pride and Lashon Hara. So it says in Arachin 16b, this is the whole page basically. What is his remedy beforehand, so that he does not come to speak malicious speech? If he is a Torah scholar, let him study Torah. So that's one thing. When we're speaking Lashon Hara, when we're not studying Torah, that's what should be coming out of our mouth. Also, side point, that I was reading in one of the commentary books on Hilchot De'ot, and it was saying that why is speech such a dangerous thing? Because all the mitzvot are like deeds, actions, but Lashon Hara require action. I mean, not action, but like speech requires thought also. And like it was saying how like that's an advanced level, which it is. animals don't have speech, and that's our like amazing quality. Okay. Anyway, so remedy, if he's a Torah scholar, let him study Torah. That will fix you. As it is stated, a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but its perverseness is a broken spirit. And the word tongue means nothing other than malicious speech. As it is stated, their tongue is a sharpened arrow, it speaks deceit. And the word tree means nothing other than Torah. So they use from this pasuk, what's the antidote to Lashon Hara? Learning Torah. But also, if he is an ignoramus, someone who's very arrogant, let him humble his mind. As it is stated, a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but its perverseness is a broken spirit. In other words, one who perverts his tongue with malicious speech should remedy his behavior by cultivating a broken and humble spirit, as one who is humble will not come to speak badly about another. So my question is to you, why is humility the antidote?
Because the problem is haughtiness. Humility is the opposite of haughtiness.
Right. And thinking about it, like if I'm a humble person, what won't I do? Or what will I recognize? What's my new awareness that I have that will make me not want to put someone else down?
Hashem is the creator. Hashem is the one who created everything. Hashem created people differently in certain ways for a reason, so I shouldn't be putting them down.
Eliane, you wanted to say something or no?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if you realize that you have flaws as well, you'll realize that like no one's perfect, so it's not fair to put people at a certain pedestal when you yourself can't hold that necessarily. Because
Yeah.
no one can.
Love that, Eliane. Yeah, Jacqueline.
Sam, what about in the case where you think that there's an evil that you need to speak out against? Like, how do you do so without being Mosi Shemra on that evil or speaking Lashon Hara about the evil? Like, what do you do in that case?
So I think Esther Hiddy was also talking about this today. But I would say
Yes, that's hysterical. Another thing, Jacqueline, you're
Yeah.
on fire.
Oh my God.
yeah, so I would say do it in private. Oh, also she was saying if you're not close enough to this person, find someone who is close to that person and tell them your criticism of this person, like because you care about them, and they'll tell them.
Right. It's like hocheach tochiach is something that we should live by. And so like it's very hard to balance with hocheach tochiach when it comes to lo tedech rechiel and lo tamad adam recha. Right. All these things are like on the one hand,
Yeah.
right, like you don't want to say something wrong and like wrong another person, but yeah, that makes sense that she said that. And I also think like coming at things from a point of compassion is different than coming at it with anger.
Right.
Like
No,
it could be that.
I don't know if you were at my class, but I gave a class on hocheach tochiach, so that's just interesting. But also, yeah. Also, I think, yeah, we talked about in that class that if you do it from a place of love and empathy and compassion, and how do you know when you do that? When, 1 second, I'm losing my train of thought. When you really care about the person, and you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for that person, then that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, it reminds me of nonviolent communication. Can you hear me? And also what Esther said, if you tell, like if I want to, help someone else and you're not doing it to fix, like I love you and I mean it, it's coming from a good place and not like a judgmental, like,
Okay, now I want to wrap up. So one thing is, who is someone who was not offended by Lashon Hara? Moshe, the most humble guy. Also, when you are humble, you recognize that what you have is a gift from God, that you are not the master. You recognize your own value. You don't need to put other people down. You don't need to be jealous of another or put jealous of another. Furthermore, I think not only should we not gossip and go from person to person and talk about other people, we should be like Aharon, which is interesting to see this whole triangle, Aharon, Moshe, Miriam. We should be like Aharon, who was Ohev Shalom v'Rodef Shalom. He went from person to person to make peace among them and to stop controversy and fights. And this could even tie into the point which we said before, that the listener was worse. Because first, when you listen, you're making that sin happen because who else would he, maybe he would tell someone else, but you're making him sin at that moment. you're also taking a passive role in things. You're not being hocheach tochiach, and you're not standing up and taking an active role in watching your brother when he's being killed. Alota mod adam re'echa. And so not only should we not allow this to happen passively, we should actively remediate controversy through ohev shalom ve'odev shalom. Okay, so now to conclude, I had this little concluding thought, which is a good message summary thing, but my mom said that it's actually nice when we go and see what we went through the whole day. So it will be 2 minutes and we're done. So first we played the game and we said, we don't know what Lashon Hara, the difference between Motzi Shem Ra, Rechilut, and all these things. And then we discovered it. And we saw that we annotate things and we underline Pitukim, and that's how you could create a class. And then we noticed that even every single word is powerful and is there for a reason. Hameragel bechavero. It ties to the point that we saw with Rashi, that he equates those two words. And we saw that Rachil Machariv Ta'olam destroys the world, and Rechilut is true. And also Lashon Hara, which is even worse. I can't imagine what that is. An atomic bomb probably it could cause, or it is, whatever. It's also true. But you're doing that with a harmful intention. And then we said Motzi Shem Ra is when you lie. Okay, we answered these questions. Then we looked at the Pesukim. Telech Rechil Be'amecha connected to Lo Ta'amod Adam Re'echa. Then we even just talked about how Lashon Hara doesn't have to be me coming out of my mouth and saying something. Text, letter, facial expression, we got to be careful. And I think we know deep down when we do something, but sometimes we don't. That's why we got to, learn this and be careful. Then we focused on that Lashon Hara, it's horrible. It's equated to these three things. Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, V'chut Amim. And we saw that it's equated and from the word great, that this was plural and those were singular. Then we talked about how you could be an atheist by speaking Lashon Hara, and how you're really just thinking that you're the master and you're forgetting all these things that we talked about. And then we talked about the tie-in of why we think that we speak Lashon Hara with regards to us being arrogant and not humble, and not realizing first that we're lucky for what we have, and that other people seeing the value in ourselves, and we don't need to put down other people. And let's see what else we did. We saw these connections, holiness. We said the remedy, learn Torah and humble yourself. Realize God's the master. And finally, don't talk about other people. It probably means you think you are better than them. And don't think that there's only one this is wrong. That you are a master. There's only one master who's God. And make sure you learn Torah, humble your spirit, and take an active role in creating peace amongst one another. Thank you, everyone. Feel free to comment and question and everything like that.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
Samantha, I
Yeah.
always think in my mind like homework after a class. I think it'd be interesting for us all to think about. I think specifically you said that that's heckin', because sometimes when you write it in the text, it just seems lighter or not as serious. That's something we can think about working on, or even emails. I know I'm always emailing, texting back and forth.
Great idea. I'm going to send you guys a voice note for homework. It's 1 minute and it talks about this. Yes, Adina.
Speaking of emails, I was doing this summer youth thing, and it was talking about like proper email etiquette. How like in certain situations, like you're supposed to like try to, like, when you send out emails, try to look professional, because like you don't know where it's going to be sent to or who's going to see it or anything. Also, I was talking about social media, like you should like try, when you post things, it shouldn't be anything about hate or anything. It should be like professional, like basically be a mensch. That's kind of what I was saying. Like,
yeah,
it was interesting.
Definitely. I love when like Judaism and professional things come together. It's always whatever, you know what I mean. Sorry, that was not English.
No, I know what you meant.
Yeah, but really,
It's just interesting.
And yeah, no, I'm glad you shared that, Adina. I love when people contribute. Like, I love when people don't contribute too, so don't worry. Like, but yeah.
Love you, Sam.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
So Jack, thanks.
Thanks,
Have a
Sam.
great night.
Bye, Vic. Thank you for coming. Deb. Ugh. Wow. I like your. Oh. Bye, Yola. Thank you.